Justice, Psychology and Sociology. I'm also the president of Albany Second Chance. And so I want to welcome you to this conference. This is a very pleasant workshop because it deals with expungement or what is called record restrictions, which is a law that the state of Georgia passed in 2013. You know, Georgia is a big state, about 10 million people. Georgia operates the 5th largest police system in the United States, number 5, largest. Georgia is the 2nd hardest state in terms of re-entry. Hardest state in terms of re-entry. There are almost 4 million people in Georgia with record. Actually, 3.8 people in Georgia with record. 1 out of every person in Georgia has a criminal record. Their unemployment rate is very high. When you have a record, it's very hard for you to do the job. They have almost 70% unemployment rate. Very, very, very high. So, but we are glad that the state of Georgia is doing something. Georgia is one of the states that are doing something to address this issue. This issue has been here for a long time, for many decades. Many decades. They have put people in jail, in jail. They can't do it no more because it is becoming unsustainable. It costs $1 billion to operate the system in Georgia. $1 billion. It's too expensive. That's why we are doing something about it. The governor, the state legislatures, they have done something. Last year, they passed HB 310 and 328. Then this year, SB 367. Those are laws that are passed to address re-entry and criminal justice reforms in Georgia. So we are grateful that at least they realize that the state has been wrong. They've been doing something wrong. They cannot keep putting your people in jail forever because it's going to explode, and it has exploded. So we are here today to address issues of how people can be helped in terms of getting your record cleaned, if it's possible. It's a very important workshop. So we thank you for coming. We have an expert here who will give you all the information you need on how you can address some of your issues. You know, every year, Georgia releases 20,000 people into the community. 20,000. Can you imagine what that means? So when they come back to Albany or whatever, they need job, they need housing, they need families, they need readjustment, and so on and so forth. And that's what Albany Second Chance is doing. Okay? So we are here to assist in any way we can. Thank you for coming, and I want to invite my boss, Dr. Marilyn Spearman, who can bring greetings from Albany State. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning. A nice crowd we have here today. I want to say I welcome you to the unsinkable Albany State University, and hopefully that you will enjoy every minute of this session. Not just enjoy it, but gain a lot of knowledge, because this is for you. And I want to thank Dr. Ochi for asking me over. And also, I want to thank Second Chance for actually working with Dr. Ochi and giving this session. Because it's very few people who know what to do or how to do it once they have a problem, especially with the law itself. So I want you to actually absorb as much as you can. And when you hear anything that's related to your situation, make sure you jot that down so you can get information about it. And I was looking at the program, and you having some sessions afterwards. I think you should take advantage of the small sessions that they'll have, especially the ones that's related to you. And I wish you a good morning. I give you greetings from the president, from the College of Arts and Humanities, and I want to thank Dr. Ochi specifically for asking me to come. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to have the person who's in charge of Doral County Judicial Department of Community Supervision, Mr. Chief Kevin Hawkins. He comes and brings some greetings and share a few thoughts with you. Chief Hawkins.
Good morning to everyone. Good morning. First of all, we thank Dr. Ochi and Albany Second Chance for inviting us, and it's just good to be here. On behalf of the Doherty Judicial Circuit Department of Community Supervision, I am Chief Kelvin Hawkins. Our coordinating chief, who is actually the one who is responsible for the entire circuit, Ms. Kimberly Pursley, could not be here this morning. But I am here on behalf of the Doherty Judicial Circuit, and we're a new department, not so new now, it's been over a year now. We used to have parole and probation in the state of Georgia, but now it's all been combined, and we're the Department of Community Supervision. All parole cases, probation cases, and soon some juvenile cases will be under our supervision. For those of you who are here, I urge you to take advantage of doing whatever you can to take care of your record. You know, if you've made a mistake at some point in the past, as Dr. Ochi alluded to, Governor Deal in the state of Georgia is taking definite steps to help those who are re-entering. For those of you who are students in the Criminal Justice Department, you've chosen a good field to be a part of, and we'd love to have you as a part of the Department of Community Supervision. Of course, you have to have your 4-year degree, so you're working on that. We do have some openings at the moment. So there are opportunities, so if anyone would like to speak with me afterwards, I'd be glad to speak with you and answer any questions you may have. But I do bring you greetings from the Department of Community Supervision here in Doherty County, and I will say that we have an awesome task ahead of us, before us. We have roughly about 3,700 individuals right now that are under our supervision between parole and probation only. That doesn't count any juveniles because we haven't received those yet. We have some great officers. We have a great staff. I'm glad to be a part of that staff, and we just enjoy helping and pointing people in the right direction so they can get their lives turned around and they can do things other than waste time being incarcerated. Once again, thank you for inviting me, and look forward to hearing what goes on today. Thank you.
Okay, that 3,700 is just for the Doral County Judicial Circuit, right?
Yeah, about 37, just for this circuit.
For the state, it's about 150,000 people on parole or under supervision. That doesn't include the 53,000 people who are in the system, who are in prison. So combine all that, over 200,000. Okay. All right. Okay. At this time, Chief. Mr. Leslie Lamb is not here. She is the community coordinator for Georgia Reentry. I'm sure she'll be here later on, so when she comes, we'll give her a time to speak. So at this time, I call on Dr. Ibe to introduce our speaker for this morning.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning.
Our keynote speaker this morning doesn't want me to give a whole lot about her because she's so good that if we continue to talk about her, it will take us all day. She is the CEO and the president of Macon Second Chance and Better Yet Staffing. She started these two endeavors, especially the Second Chance of Macon, in 2007. If you go back, you see that in 2006, that was when George Bush started talking about Second Chance. He did that out of his Christian faith. Otherwise, we could still be facing the problem we have been facing with incarcerated individuals. Our keynote speaker, if I don't know, there may be some students who were here, but I don't believe that any student was here when the Second Chance of Albany was launched. She was our keynote speaker. She spoke at length about Second Chance and spoke at length about record restriction. She became an integral part of Albany Second Chance, which I'm the vice president. And she has been very, very useful to us. She has accompanied us to many places, even Sylvester, all the places we have been to talk about our returning citizens, because this is very important to us. Even as we in academia, we talk and talk and talk in the classroom, but when it comes to practice, it becomes, some of us don't care. But what we did in Albany Second Chance is that we tried to put our knowledge, into work. That was when myself and Dr. Chia and some other members of the Second Chance formed this Second Chance. She was here, she encouraged us, and she made us know that there's no financial benefit there. It's what you do to help people, and that's what she has been doing. So in our own Second Chance of Albany, we try to emulate her. She set high examples for us. She has been very good with Albany Second Chance. She has been very good in what she's doing. So like she said, she doesn't want long introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me in welcoming Ms. Evelyn Jones.
Good morning.
Good morning.
After that long introduction, all I can say is wow. I said to Dr. Ebay when we were in the conference room, I said, this isn't about me at all today. It's about what I can do for the community. We at Second Chance in Macon believe that the community is not just where we live, but it's whom we serve. The attorney in our office, Attorney Melvin Raines, had planned to be here today, but unfortunately he was tied up in court. So Ms. Cooper and myself are here. If I was asked, and someone asked me this just the other day, how in the world did you get started with Second Chance? Do you know I don't have an answer? I honestly do not have an answer. When I relocated back to Georgia from California in 1996, there was a friend of mine that I had known since we were teenagers that was a regional top step rep. And I followed Ivy Webb into the prisons everywhere he went. So there was Ivy Webb, and then there was a young guy out of Atlanta, and then one from down in Claxton, Georgia. So it was just a constant battle. I was going to follow someone that day, some prison I was going to go. So I had an employment agency, better yet staffing, and during this time, the only thing my clients wanted was to be able to pass a drug test. And I was so good at it. Let me tell you, I was just so good. And now when I step to the medical center, a lot of other places that we go, these people are permanently employed. Well, they started to come to me and it was just so much disgust because now they're asking for criminal histories. And it broke my heart. So I questioned everyone I knew, Judge Randall in Macon, who's our senior magistrate judge, who sponsored the Expungement Act when he was in the legislature. So I would just track him down. One day he said to me, "Girl, what are you doing down there?" And I said, not practicing law, and that's for sure. So he came to visit my office, and I started showing him things that was on criminal histories, and it just blew his mind because he was never, ever aware of that. And it took me a minute to realize that as attorneys, as judges, they know theory, but they do not, know this little piece of paper that makes all the difference in the world. So what I want to do today, and I am not a speaker by a long shot. My degree is in music, sorry. And after I left the school system, I was a TV announcer, so I'm not a speaker. But what I'd like to do today, if it's okay, I'd like to just make this very, very informal. So if I say something, and if it pertains to you or you have a question, just stop me. And let me just address that issue while we're thinking about it. So just get comfortable, kick your shoes off if you may, and let's go. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, the first thing that I want to address is the two things that Hope and I hear in the office all the time. And the first one is, it's not on my record because that's been 10, 15 years ago. So let me address that. Not true. Not true, not in the state of Georgia. Although every state has different guidelines, but we're going to deal with Georgia today. In the state of Georgia, if you have an adjudication of guilt, in other words, if you have been convicted, it follows you indefinitely. It never, ever, ever leaves you. The second thing that I want to address before we get into the histories is, this is what we hear, but Ms. Jones, the new record law, the new record law, the record restriction law does not restrict your record. And we will get into the record restriction law as it pertains to you or how it may or may not help you. But I think the first thing that I'd like to do is explain to you how your criminal history starts, what happens with it, how you get a record in the first place, and where your arrests are stored. So we're going to start by addressing the Georgia Crime Information Center, which in my opinion is the hub for every arrest in the state of Georgia, GCIC. And Atlanta is the hub for every arrest in the state of Georgia. What happens here is when you are arrested, your fingerprint are automatically transmitted to Atlanta, to your Georgia Crime Information Center. Now, the criminal history, and I'm going to put this in layman's terms so that we can understand it, because you're not going to understand all the legal terms that we hear in the office all the time. So let's just put it in layman's terms where we can be very, very simple and specific. Now, the criminal history is split into three parts. The first part is what we refer to as your arrest information. This is your fingerprint. Now, that is going to consist of your name, your date of birth, your social, the arresting agency, the charge lateral, which basically means what you're charged with, and the severity, okay? That information sits right here until either the DA or the judge takes it and decides what is going to go with it, what will happen to it. So that record goes from here to here. This is what we call your court disposition. Here's where you're going to either be found guilty or not guilty, or whatever the case may be. The third part of that criminal history is what we call your sentencing information. And here's what happens to you, whether you are given probation, whether the charges are dismissed, or whatever happens with that arrest. That is your arrest information. Now, people say, well, I want to get this expunged off of my record. As of December 2012, we had until July 2013 to get everything in place, and it's now known as record restriction. The only way that you're going to be able to restrict that information at all, if those charges are dismissed, if there are no pros, if there are no further action anticipated, not prosecuted, and now, since we have the record restriction, dead docked kind of falls in there. But we'll get to that and explain what actually happens there with the dead docked information. Now, let's just say hypothetically speaking, because here is what I get a lot of in the office. Hypothetically speaking, I just walk out and I'm pulled over. Say the probable cause is I have a tail light out and I'm arrested for that. Well, pulled over for that. Let's just say I have a beer can. That's gonna be open container. Okay, count 2 of that. Let's just see, you might have a child out of a car seat, child endangerment. Might have what they think is marijuana, count 4. Now, they might come to you and say, okay, we're gonna dismiss this one, and this one, and this one, but we're gonna charge you with this one. People say, if it's on your background, that those counts are going to say dismissed. You cannot restrict that. And you cannot restrict that because that is known as what we call a negotiated plea. See, I gotta give you something, but you're gonna give me something too. So I'm gonna take these back if you take that back. And that is what we hear a lot of. And when you see the backgrounds, you see dismiss, 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 dismiss. But it's not going anywhere, not ever. Another hypothetical situation I see or hear is that Hope and I may have the same arrest, we may be arrested for the same thing, but Hope may have an attorney out here, and I might not. Hope's attorney may get with the DA and come up with maybe conditional program. Hope is not gonna have a record, but I will, because it doesn't help you ever, ever, ever to go in the courtroom without an attorney. Never, ever, ever. I don't care how minute you think it is, because see, you don't know the law. You sit up and we hear, but Ms. Jones, I pled NOLO. That is nothing but a guilty charge. That is all that is. And if you look at your background, you're gonna see NOLO/adjudicated/guilty. And they'll say, yes, sir.
To help out, even like our young students, when you mentioned just NOLO, and it has been said in the past, I guess what I'm saying is by helping them out to understand that you're saying, I'm not pleading guilty, I'm not pleading not guilty. So
But I'm gonna take the punishment.
Yes. To get them to understand that's what they're saying.
When you plead NOLO, essentially is what you're saying, I'm not admitting guilt, didn't say I didn't do it, but I'll just take the punishment for it. It is my understanding, and I would have to check on this with the attorney, but we had this conversation one day, and he said to me that the only time a NOLO was good, if you have maybe a CDL license, you're trying to keep points off of it, then it's good because it's not going to count against you. Now, sometimes when you have these charges, the attorney can get with the DA, and there are programs out there that will stop your arrest at stage 1. So it's not gonna go from here to the adjudication part of it, because once it ever goes to the adjudication, you're stuck. So what you want to do is you want to stop it here with the first step of it, because see, you have conditional laws. You have what we call First Offender Act, the FOA. You have what we call in some counties pretrial diversion. If you are a juvenile and you're caught with less than an ounce of marijuana, you have that conditional law, where the adjudication of these charges are withheld. So in other words, the judge says, look, I know you did this, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold it right here. And I'm going to give you the opportunity to not have a record, not have an adjudication of guilt. And if you will do sometimes your probation, it's always probation, sometimes community service, and pay your fine, once you do it, then the judge will kind of forgive that, for a better word. But when you have a first offender, you want to be very, 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 very careful with that. Because once you have a violation of that First Offender Act, then your probation officer can revoke your probation in full. And they will do this, won't they, sir? They will revoke that probation in full. And they're going to give you, depending on, how you are. I always tell people when they come to my office, and I think what we do is we serve as a counselor, I serve as mama, daddy, and I tell them, once you step in my office, I become mama, and you're gonna listen to me. Young lady said to me just day before yesterday, she walked in, she said, Ms. Jones, such and such a person told me to come and see you, that you would help me, but I gotta hear your lecture first. I said to her, okay, which do you want first? Do you want the lecture or do you want me to help you? Now, I am so very, very, very proud of Second Chance of Macon. I would say we have, would you say, a 90% success rate? I can count the ones, the pardons that we have not gotten. Just this week, and I always like to tell my success stories. A young lady, Jacqueline Jones, I think Hope did her background, called me from, is it Valdosta? She told me that she's graduating with her master's and that she's got a pardon and she will march in December and that she will be sending me a copy of her invitation. I said, please do. We were talking in the break room about Sonia Russell. It took me 2 years to straighten her record out. You wouldn't believe. It started with the DA. And we had to go all the way back. But you know what? She was so humble. She never gave up. She never gave up. Sometimes I was frustrated, but I couldn't let her know that I was frustrated. So she called me the other Saturday, and she said, I got my part, Ms. Jones, and I've just been accepted in nursing school. You see, this is the best feeling. It's all the pay in the world. And you can always find me in my office at 9 and 10 o'clock at night, 7 days a week. I don't care, because when you like what you do not have a time. You don't have a time, you just like it. And I like turning the impossible and making it possible. I mean, that is the greatest feeling. Now, I also want to talk to you about the number of arrests that you have on your criminal history. Each time that you have an arrest, it's known as a cycle. This is how GCIC keeps up with the number of times you've been in trouble. If it's the first time, cycle 1. I hope you guys will stop it at cycle 1 if you're ever in trouble, or if you know someone that might get in trouble. If you're arrested the second time, it's cycle 2, and so on, and so on, and so on. Every time you're arrested, it's known as a cycle. Now, I kind of want to pin in on the record restriction law, because this has really got a lot of people up in the air with record restriction. There used to be a time, and there still is, say you go to court, and when you've been sentenced, but your paperwork is still on the DA's desk, or your magistrate, whatever the court is that you went to. Sometimes, you see, this information prior to 2013 has to be transmitted into the system. Okay. The only way GCIC will know this is when this information is transmitted into the system. If this arrest happened prior to 2012. Okay. Now, what was happening is that the arrest, remember I told you it consists of 3 parts: your arrest, your disposition, and your sentencing. What has been happening is that a lot of times this information has not been transmitted to the system. So if you pull your background, even though you know you've been sentenced, is going to stand out here and looks like an open arrest. Now, what I tell people all the time, if you fill out a job application, please tell the truth. Just because this is not sitting out here, don't say it's not there, because that person the employer may pull your background from fingerprints. They don't lie. Every arrest that you've had is going to be there from your fingerprint. Now, under record restriction, when that information is sitting out there, to me, an arrest is like an open sore. If you need stitches, it's not going to close up until you sew it up. Well, your record is kind of the same way, for a better word. You gotta take it all the way through the system. Under record restriction, you had so much of that happening until GCIC in Atlanta restricts it. Now, you gotta work, and you say that you've never been sentenced or whatever the case may be. When that DA decides that he wants to go in there and transmit this information in there, here it is, and you just lied. Because now they go in there and they put it in. Now, also another thing under record restriction that helps you out a lot is, a lot of times you're arrested. If it's a misdemeanor charge and it's just sitting here and it hasn't been taken through the system, after 2 years, only on a misdemeanor, record restriction will restrict that charge. So they can no longer go back and pick it up. Misdemeanor, 2 years. Now, if it's a felony charge under misdemeanor, depending on the degree of felony, it can be 4 years to 7 years, depending on the degree of that felony. Other than now, if it falls under the 7 deadly sins, and if it falls there, you're stuck. You can go back and get it whenever. Now, also under record restriction, what has been happening is that you were sentenced or you were not sentenced, and this arrest is sitting out here on dead docket. It used to be, you could stay there forever. Now, depending again, the degree of it, you can always request that that particular arrest be restricted, dismissed, or whatever that they're going to do to it. Now, if you have one of these charges that happened after 2013, yes?
7 deadly sins, like murder, child molestation.
Yes, murder, child molestation, aggravated assault, now they've added the 8th, the 2nd degree murder. They've added the 8th charge. Now, what I wanted to tell you is that if you had this arrest and it happened after 2013, you no longer have to, you're not supposed to. So let me go back in and correct that. You're not supposed to have to do the paperwork for the application for restriction anymore. It's supposed to be done at the DA's office or wherever it was handled. And I say it's supposed to be. It is your responsibility to make sure this is done. What I always say, and I have a son that's been a deputy sheriff in Bibb County for about 26 years, and I said to him one day, can you believe I had 2 warrants on me? He said, Mama, get out of here. I've never had a speed ticket in my life. I just happened to be talking to a friend of mine at GCIC, and I said, let me just go pull this background. So it behooves you to get a copy of your criminal history just as your credit, because you don't ever know. You have so much identity theft now. You just don't ever know. You may be in Florida somewhere and someone has used your identity. And we have this to happen right there in Macon. If someone used your identity and you didn't show up for court, of course not, because it's not you. But if that police officer pulls you over, the only thing he sees is what's in his system, and you're going to jail. And God forbid it be on a weekend or a holiday, because you're going to sit there. So, you know, in as much as I do, I still spend a lot of time in the prisons, and a lot of times they'll say, oh, Miss Jones, just come on. No, 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 no. Send me that NCIC form. Let's just pull this, because I need to know. You know, you want to know, because you don't ever want it to be a case where you've applied for a position. I mean, even now, boy, even with credit, they're pulling this. So, you know, you just have to be very, very, very careful with this. And with these criminal histories, I mean, they get to be sticky. And you would be surprised at employers that do not know how to read a criminal history. You would be surprised. I mean, sometimes it's as much as just filling out the application for restriction. Now, let's just say, now here's a sticky part. Here's what really gets good right here. Let's just say you have a conviction. Lord knows that in the state of Georgia, you can never restrict a conviction. Not in the state of Georgia. Not ever, 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 ever in your lifetime. Unless, of course, they change the laws, which I doubt very seriously if they will. Now, let's just say that you have a conviction. We can always do what we call a conditional pardon.
A conditional what?
Conditional pardon, P-A-R-D-O-N. Now, what that conditional pardon does is it restores your civil and your political rights. If you wanted to go run for public office, you can. Now, what they don't tell you is that once you come off probation, your right to vote should automatically be restored, depending on how long you being a convicted felon has been out there. Sometimes you have to go back and re-register, but you will get that right back. Now, one of the questions that I'm asked a lot, what about my firearm rights? That gets sticky. Used to be, if you didn't have a drug trafficking charge or a violent offense, you could get it. But now, let me tell you, you can have anything as simple as a simple battery. You're not going to touch it. Any drug charge, you're not going to touch it. I, as a rule, don't try to. I don't deal with gun rights. I let you go get those if you want it. But I'll do the conditional, the civil and the political right. Now, the Board of Pardons and Parole in the state of Georgia says the qualifications for a conditional pardon is you do not have any pending charges, you owe no restitution, you owe no fines, and that you have been crime-free for 5 years without any criminal involvement. Now, let me stress to you, without any criminal involvement, that time does not start until your probation is over. Now, you can get out of the system, get out of prison, get out of jail, be on probation. That time does not count. That 5 years start to count after your probation is over. Now, the state of Georgia, and we have had this to happen in our office a lot, depending on how many times that you've been arrested. State of Georgia get kind of lenient a little bit. They say if that 5-year waiting period is shown to be detrimental to the livelihood of you getting the kind of job you want, that 5-year waiting period may be waived. We've tried it, it's happened. But now, if you have been getting in trouble, I'm not gonna touch it, because it specifically says each case is based on an individual merit. So if you've just been in trouble maybe a time or two, isolated, yeah, I'll try it. But I've been doing this so long till you just about know what they're gonna do and what they're not gonna do. Now, with the conditional pardon, it does not leave your record. Unfortunately, it will not take it from your record. What it will say is pardoned. I'll be cited. Sometimes. I've seen situations where it's not put on there, but they will send you a certificate of pardon from the Board of Pardons and Parole. And what I often say to people is that you make a copy of it. You keep the original in a safe place. I'm asked when I fill out a job application, do I say I've been convicted? Of course you do. You have been convicted. You've just been forgiven. A pardon is a declaration of forgiveness by the state that says you've been totally rehabilitated and forgiven without implying innocence. Not saying you didn't do it, because you did. Not saying you didn't do it. Yes, sir.
What if you got 5 years right now, no felonies, out practice?
You know what? Here I'm seeing, well, a traffic ticket, it's kind of iffy because that should be a non-fingerprintable charge. So it's not supposed to be on your record. That's fingerprintable. That's fingerprintable. I can tell you now, they're not going to do it if that's showing out there. But now, in this young man's case, a traffic ticket now, I say it's not supposed to be on your record. I've seen it on there because it's going to depend on what else they charge you with in that cycle. See, they may charge you with, I don't know, a reckless driving or something, or something. So yeah, if they charge you with that, then they're going to fingerprint you. That should be non-fingerprintable too. That should be non-fingerprintable. Now, yes, ma'am.
As far as the record being sealed, does that mean that if my employer wants to look at my criminal background, they won't see something, but the law enforcement, if I was to get pulled over, the law enforcement will be able to see?
You have what we call, in pulling your criminal histories, employees should do what we call a purpose code E. Now, your criminal justice system does what we call a purpose code C, and it shows every arrest that you have ever had, because it's not going anywhere. Now, you mentioned SEAL. That kind of falls under your first offender. Now, here is the kind of tricky part to me, and I've had this argument quite a few times. Under a first offender, you have an arrest, but you don't actually have a conviction. You see, it stopped right here. Okay. So it doesn't go from here to here. So you don't have a conviction, and that's one of the arguments that I have a lot with employees in Macon. Listen, anybody can be arrested, but it's when you are convicted that it actually makes a difference. Now, I was told once, and I'm asked a lot of times, what can I do to get this totally gone? I don't know the answer to that other than a full pardon that only the President of the United States can do, and I think very few of those will he do. Now, if you have, let's just say you lived in Kentucky, you got in trouble in Kentucky, you moved to Georgia, you went to prison in Georgia. When I pull your criminal history from GCIC, it's going to only show Georgia. Now, you still got these other charges out here, so now you're going to have to do, and I did this just the other week, you get your total history from FBI. And they have what they call chancellors out there that you can go and get copies of your record. I think you submit a copy of your fingerprints, and I think $50 or something, I believe it is. They'll either email them to you or mail them to you. So this is what you're going to have to do to be able to do that if you have arrests in different states. But you have to bear in mind now, every state has different guidelines. Florida is one of the ones I hate with a passion to do, because only the governor does all of the pardons there. South Carolina is another state that does it. Where in Georgia, you're governed by the Board of Pardons and Parole, you see. But some of your Commonwealth states, I don't like dealing with those either, because they get kind of difficult. And what I usually do is just kind of throw them to the side and pick up them on Saturdays and Sundays when the phone's not ringing.
So if I had a charge, and I was charged, this was over 16, 17 years ago. It's a felony, and it was for entering auto. I broke out my neighbor's window. I paid restitution. I was on, and I violated my probation because at the time I was an active addict. Recovery since 2005.
Congratulations.
But, thank you, but so that's what I'm trying. In other words, if I pleaded guilty, because I heard you say guilty, and I didn't have a lawyer. So back then I didn't know nothing about the complying with the statutes of the law. So, that's why I'm asking about the seal and all this, because
Was that in Georgia?
Yes, ma'am. I have credentials and I have not been able to get a productive job.
What needs to happen with that is that you need to do a conditional pardon. Let me tell you, it works. Just last week, Melvin Jones in Macon, his record was just a mess, but we cleared him up, and now he's the assistant coach at Stratford Academy, one of your better schools in Macon. So it works. But even with the pardons, you kind of got to do some of the work yourself. And when I say that, image is everything. If you walk in looking like someone, then they may kind of look past that and see what you have to say, but you have to sell yourself first. You have to do that. Now, you're gonna have doors to close in your face, a lot of that. But you know what, you have to just kind of just keep the faith and move on. Kind of like when I started Second Chance. It was just sporadic, a record here, record there. Now we do them all over the U.S. We have so many you just would not believe. Yes, sir.
Yeah, there's a fee behind it.
Which one? Yes, there is, and we'll talk about that. Now, sometimes we'll just kind of, depending on my mood. I have to do a little bit of charity every now and then, depending on my mood. Hope is better at it than me. She's good because I'm gone, so she's better at it than me. She'll say, well, Miss Jones, what? And then, and another great thing is a lot of times, and this has been great for us, is that because we have an attorney in the office, sometimes people come in there and they have open charges. They have not been to court. I'm a paralegal by trade, so I serve as Melvin's paralegal, so I'll just sign his name, file the documents, and say, look, I need you to do this. So he will do it for us, and sometimes that stops this person from having an adjudication of guilt. So it kind of works out for us. In fact, I wish he had been able to be here today. He wanted to come, but yes, sir, in the back.
Yes, what about probation violation charge?
Whoa.
You're already on probation, like you're already top charge, everything like that. You're already on probation or whatnot, and you get a charge for anything like there's not reporting or failure to e-minute or failure to comply. They show that on the record too. Is that a way?
They do. They do. Let me just say this to you. When you're on probation, and I say this with all honesty, you do what your probation officer or your parole officer tells you to do. Do not put yourself in these situations, because if that probation is revoked, you're going to get that probation revocation and you're going to get that charge back again. So it's like the snowball effect. It just keeps going and going and going. So, two wrongs does not make a right. If you've already been in trouble, just don't do it again. Do what your probation officer tells you to do. If he tells you, if you know that you're to get a job, you can't make anyone hire you. But here's what I tell my people that come through. Go look for a job. Look. I always tell them, keep a running total of who you saw, who you spoke to, what they said to you, exactly, a phone number. So if your probation officer chooses to check behind you, it's all documented. And at least he'll be sympathetic and see that you're trying. But now if you go in there with this attitude, if I was a probation officer, I'd throw you out of my office. I'm being honest with you. And I have to just kind of, set him down in there a minute. Hope can tell you. You know, listen, if you're going to come in here knowing more than I know, get out. You know, because I'm blunt, but I will help you. But you have to help yourself. Because you see, when you choose to go out there and break the law, I know sometimes there are circumstances where we're placed in positions, and I understand that. But the law is the law, and they're put there for a reason. And if you're going to create your own, but you know, what I always say, and I say this with everything I have in me, is that you can never get ahead by looking back. Not only do you need to close that chapter, but you need to close that book. And let's start a brand new one, because there is hope at the end of the tunnel. And if you were in the Macon office, I could show you some success stories. You would go, wow. Now, some are harder than the others. And not everyone is eligible for that right now. But what I tell you, because I'm just not going to tell you something that's not true, because I don't want to give you false hope. I don't want to tell you it's purple out here when it's blue. If it's purple, I'm going to tell you it's purple, and let's just work to get it blue, if possible. So I'm just going to tell you the truth. I might say to you, you know what, I just don't think it's a very good time to try this now. Let's wait until next year. But in the meantime, you do this, 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 and this. And again, you know, those doors are going to slam in your face. They slam in my face. And I have 2 degrees. So, but you know, you just have to keep on until you make that negative a positive, and it will become that. And trust me when I tell you, your probation officers, your parole officers, they want to work with you because they are woke. So if you're going, they want to put you on non-report because they don't want to have to supervise you coming in there every week. You know, that's a lot of work, right, sir? So they don't want to have to look at you every week. So why don't you do what they tell you to do? I think there's House Bill 1607 that says something like if you're on probation, you've been on non-report for 2 or more years, have no restitution, no outstanding fine, and I say you trying, then you can go to your probation officer and ask him, sir, would you help me? Would you please write a letter to the judge and ask him to terminate my probation, what we call early termination. He cannot do it, but he has all that force. Kind of like when I was teaching school, I would say, you know what, this pencil got a lot of power to it. So if you go in there and you do what he wants you to do, he wants you to succeed. Right, sir? He loves to see you succeed.
Absolutely.
You know, I have one young lady, and I wish I had been able to get her here. This young lady did everything that was in the world. You think she did it. She was on probation in Bainbridge, Georgia. But when this young lady came to me, I saw something in her that she didn't see in herself. And I sat her down there, and we had some long conversations. So I contacted her probation officer rather, and we talked, and I told her exactly what this young lady was doing. She said to me, well, Ms. Jones, let me see if I can help you. She wrote a letter to the judge. We terminated her probation. So I followed her success. This young lady had her BS from Mercer, on Dean's List, President's List, Honor Society, you name it. Then she went on to get her graduate degree. And I stopped following her then. I saw 2 months ago on Facebook she's gotten a PhD and she's in Atlanta working. I said to her, I'm so proud of you. She said, hey, thank you, Ms. J. Couldn't have done it if it wasn't for you. I said, sweetie, I opened the door, you walked in. And I contacted her probation officer, and she said to me, can you send me a copy of her accomplishments? And I did it, and I heard that before the probation officer retired, she had them on the wall. This is her success story. So you see, it can happen, but you have got to help. It can happen. So, you know what I'd like to, yes, sir, in the back.
Yes, I mean, look, I wasn't trying to be like prejudice with like commissioners and probation officers. They're saying that basically, after you got a probation, after you finish,
Okay?
And on your record, after you look, there is some time ain't got no trouble.
Uh-huh.
After you go get your record and it still says, that you have a probation violation, is there any way we can?
Okay, so are you saying that on your, it's showing as an open case as a probation?
It's closed.
It's closed. Okay, you're not going to be able to take that off of the record because it is in fact a violation. So what you would have to do with that is submit your application for a conditional pardon, and you're gonna have to list that too. Now, the Board of Pardons and Parole has gotten a little bit more strict than they used to be when I started doing pardons in 2007. The application was 1 page. It went from 1 page to 3 pages. Now it's a book. Because not only do I have to go and address every arrest that you've had on there, but you also have to give me 3 letters of references, and they have to be strong. You see, because this is what's going to determine whether they say yay or nay. Now they've added another step. They are sending an investigator out now to interview you. So you see, they're making it difficult. So we need to go on when we can, submit these applications, and let's try and get you straight so we can make you productive and you can get a job. Because let me tell you, and we have an employment agency, and I can tell you, if you have a theft, I don't care if it's misdemeanor, nobody's gonna touch you. One of my employees said to me, you know what, Miss Jones? I hired somebody that had a murder quicker than I would a theft, because if you kill somebody, you probably won't do it again, but you're gonna keep on stealing. Just about true. Is that not true? And so, and he told me that. Now, if you have a theft, let me tell you, that's one of the worst things you can have, in addition to any battery charge. You got so much violence going on. Employers are scared of that. And if you have a history of simple batteries, simple assault, they're not gonna touch you because they're afraid of you. So let's just be careful with that kind of thing. Yes, sir.
So you said like the format you just said. So along with that, like the ag assault, is that like hard to get that off?
Aggravated assault. If you have an adjudication of guilt, you're not going to get, it's not going to go anywhere. We're going to have to do a conditional part. Now, let me tell you something that has worked with us a couple of times, but again, we're in Bibb County. So I don't know about Doty County that much because I don't live here, so I don't deal with, your police officers and so forth. But in Macon, what we have done, and I did this just the other week, there was this young man that only had 1 arrest, and it was a long time ago, 16, 17 years. He hadn't done anything else. I went back to the judge, and I said, sir, I need your help. And he wanted to know, what can I do for you? And I explained the situation to him. So you know what we did? We modified that sentence and ran him under a first offender because he had not done anything else. Now the judge, he has the power to do that. Whether he will or not, I don't know, because I don't know about Doty County, but I know about Bibb County and some of the other counties I do.
I'm from Early County.
I'm sorry?
I'm from Early County.
Early County, don't know about
that.
it.
You say like the first offender. I had an ag assault, my first charge when I first jumped out the porch. I mean, it's still on my record. I mean, I've got 5 years on the first offender.
Did you complete it? Have you, you're done with your probation?
My mom next to a preacher, so I had.
And so it's still on your record?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, what we need to do for that is, now I can tell you what has happened with that, and I'm not even looking at it. You see, when you complete any conditional program, whether it's first offender, whether it's pretrial, the probation officer is going to give you your conditions at the very top of it. It's going to give you your conditions. At the very bottom of it, it's going to have the completion on it. On that completion, your probation officer is going to have to sign it, and it's going to have to go to the judge for the judge to sign off on it. And then once that happens, then we can restrict it. Because you see, it's a process. So you have to have these signatures, and it's not unusual for that to happen. Is that right, sir? It's not unusual. And it's not that they are not paying you any attention. It's just that they're busy. You know, they're busy. I had that to happen to a young lady, had been our first offender for 10 years. I thought, what in the world? And it was up in Atlanta, in Fulton County, I believe it was. And that's exactly what had happened to her, because when I contacted GCIC, they were showing it as open, that she had not completed it. So what we had to do was go back and get the probation officer to sign off on. Sad thing, sir, was that probation company is no longer in effect. So I had to go back and dig and dig and dig and find those records to be able to do it. Because see, this is something that you really have to be careful with, because you get in trouble. Nobody's gonna go in there and play with GCIC. You get in trouble about that. So you have to, everyone is gonna have your, it's kind of like a bank, debit and credits. You know, everything outlines the other. You can come to me and say, well, you know, I didn't do such and such a thing. All I gotta do is call GCIC or your superior court. I can tell you exactly what you did. So, but that's what you need to do. You need to go back. If you, did your probation officer give you a completion? Did you get that?
I believe I did.
Okay. If you can contact our office, I'll track that down and see what's going on.
Kick it to it though. I'm on probation.
Uh-oh.
That's
Okay.
why I wanted to ask you a question. I was waiting till you got all the other questions. I didn't want to
Okay.
waste my time or your time.
All right, let me ask you this. You completed that particular, so you didn't violate that probation, right? You didn't. Well, if you didn't violate that, it has nothing to do with what you're on probation for.
Speaking like for the sense, like, okay, just say I did a job for a cleaning service last week. And when I say they broke it down, my background check, and they showed it to me. That was the first thing that popped up. But I was on the first offender act. But like I say, I didn't do anything. No reoccurring charges.
Did your probation say it should have conditional program pending? Does it say that out on your background?
It didn't say nothing, it just said.
And you didn't violate it?
I didn't violate.
How long ago was
So it
this?
was first offender, you didn't violate.
First offender, my first charge I ever had, they gave me first offender act. Like I said, I stayed with my mom next to the preacher, so I didn't have an option of breaking the law anymore. So 5 years I did nothing but work. It's still on my record today.
Well, it's on your record because the paperwork has not gone through the system provided. Now, you cannot do anything in that time because,
That 5 years I did nothing.
I know the coordinating chief for Atala Circuit, because Early County falls under Atala Circuit.
Best circuit in the world. Best circuit in the
But
world.
I know, put it this way, I'll call the coordinating chief.
there you go.
Just talking.
Do you have any other questions that I can, yes, ma'am?
Does a conditional pardon, if it's approved, does it remove the charges without the background?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. It just says beside it pardoned. And it gives you a certificate from the Board of Pardons and Parole that has the seal on it and so forth and so forth. Has a lot of legal stuff on it. But no, it does not remove it. Unfortunately, in the state of Georgia, once there is an adjudication of guilt, you're kind of stuck. Unless some of the legislators go in and chooses to change it.
Would that kind of turn him?
Oh, definitely. Oh, yeah. Conditional pardons help. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. They help tremendously.
That's just to hide the criminal background.
It doesn't, on a conditional pardon, it does not hide the arrest now. It's still there. It's going to show what you've been arrested for. It's just going to say, remember, it's a declaration of forgiveness by the state that says you have been totally rehabilitated and forgiven without implying innocence. You see, if they took that from you, it would say you didn't do it. Now, only the president can give you a full pardon where it's not visible. Now, we don't.
Maybe it wouldn't be open for them.
Yes, sir.
Still open for them.
Yes, sir.
If they want.
Yes, sir. It's still there, unfortunately. But you know, the pardons carry a lot of weight. Now, let me stress to you also, let me just say this. If you have a federal offense, let's say you went to federal prison, it's not going to show up on this GCIC. Only Sir here, they'll see it because he has access to the Purpose Code C and he can see that. But GCIC, even if you were arrested by the state, probably, if you were arrested by the state and the feds pick you up, it's probably going to say something like, not prosecuted, not presented for prosecution or something like that, meaning that the state did not prosecute you, the feds did. So now you're going to have to go two different ways with a pardon. The federal is harder to do than the state, much harder. Federal is much harder to do. Yes, sir.
So once we get additional pardon, Ms. Jones, it just one process time while doing no more.
No, you don't do it anymore. You just do it one time, but you just don't get in trouble anymore because they can only grant you one. And that conditional pardon is going to only cover the charges that you have on your record at the time. So you want to be careful not to get in any more trouble because they're just going to be out there.
All the charges are just for one charge?
No, when we do the conditional pardon, we have to take every arrest that you have had and we have to list it on that conditional, on the application process, and we have to give all the circumstances now surrounding that arrest. What happened, why you were arrested, what happened in the end. So
each one of them?
Each individual arrest has to be addressed.
And go to each different?
No. It doesn't go to the officer. You will know what happened. So you, doesn't go to the judge. We take the application. Once we complete the application, we take the whole application, we submit it to the Board of Pardons and Parole. They take it, and it goes to every individual county. They're going to research you to be sure you don't have any fines or anything out there. And then when that is done, then it comes back to the board after the investigator comes out to interview you. So it's a process. It can take up to a year to do it, depending on how much you have on your record.
When I was downtown, they told me each charge that I had to go to different arresting officers that arrested me on each charge.
Not so, sir. There is one application, and it's a pardon application. So we take every one of those as a segment on it. I want to say it's like page 5 or something. We have to list that arrest, the date, who arrested you, and tell what happened in there. It's all done on one page. So if you've been arrested 15 times and maybe 2 of those 15 times, you may have 3 or 4 different counts in it. We got to address each one of those. I don't know what they told you. They probably were thinking about a record restriction. That's probably what they were thinking about, and that it has to go back to the arresting officer. But now remember what I just told you.
I have to pay for each one of those charges?
Yes, you do. Every cycle. Now, if you got 4, but now, bear in mind now, it's not going to do you any good if you have a adjudication of guilt, because it's not going to happen.
No, I don't have none.
All of your charges were dismissed?
No, they didn't dismiss it. I never was found guilty on either one of them, but they got them still pending on.
How long ago has it been?
One of them 5 years, American over 10 years. The judge told me he wasn't going to expunge due to the fact that he feel that I was going to get back in trouble.
That could be true.
So then I got to turn around again and spend another $25 more to take it back.
Well, you know, when you are doing restriction applications, it is actually up to the district attorney to decide as to whether or not he will approve or deny that. Because see, if your charges happen prior to 2013, you see that first page, you're going to complete it. Then it goes to the arresting officer for them to complete theirs. And then the third part, it goes to the district attorney, and here's where he approves it. Now, a lot of times what I've seen happen, if you continuously get in trouble for the same thing, they will not approve it.
But if it been a period of time, you ain't got no trouble. That period of time seems like they should have went ahead on the deal right then. Now I'm going to try to go back to record and say, well, he looked like a troubled child, so I'm not going to expunge him.
Well, even if they, now bear in mind under record restriction, if it's a felony, depending on the degree of felony, after 4 to 7 years, they got to do something with it. They either got to bring you to trial or do something with it. You just can't just sit there indefinitely, not under the new record restriction law. Now, there was a time you could just sit there, but not now. Now, and also, if the district attorney denies the restriction, at the very bottom, on the very last sheet, it has approved, denied. If he checks denied down in that little block above, below it, usually they give you a reason as to why it's denied. You can always appeal it. Not saying it's gonna work, but you know, you can do it.
It's a waste of money to keep getting them. And, you know, we're gonna keep them the same thing.
Not necessarily. Yes, ma'am.
I just have one more question for you. To get this started, this party, I have an appointment with Second Chance Thursday at 9:30. Does it start there or what?
Second Chance, our partner office here will contact us with
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the
You're
information.
more-
I have another appointment. Y'all have a blessed.
You too, and thank you for coming.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
Thank you for coming.
Man, Ms. Jones.
Yes,
So like if you're on probation for a charge, you have to wait till you complete that probation charge?
yes. You can't apply for a pardon as long as you're on probation. Remember, you can't have any pending charge, you can't owe any restitution, you can't have any outstanding fines, and that 5-year waiting period will start after you complete that probation. Sorry. I mean, you could try it after 2 years. I mean, you could try it. You know, each case is based on an individual merit. Doesn't cost you any money to apply for the pardon, so you could try it. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, I have pulled up this piece of paper that said the judge got the 5 years. It's up to the judge whether or not they, you know, dismiss it or anything, throw it out. But the law changed so much here, and then if you go to law library, you got an old book.
But see, but when you go to law library, if you look at these laws, it's going to always tell you refer to section such and such a thing. Then it'll tell you refer to such and such. So you got to know how to read this, because it's going to always send you somewhere else and somewhere else and somewhere else, and then at the end you probably get to the answer that you're looking for. I mean, that's been the case with us. You know, even when we go to Westlaw, you look at this one, you logot to refer to this one. So